At 6:10, special meeting of the City Council of the City of San Juan Bautista. Did I say that 6:10? Can we do the Pledge of Allegiance? John, can you start us off on the Pledge of Allegiance? All rise, please.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Norma, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor, I do want to apologize. I pulled the names off the website, so if these aren't correct, please correct me. I have Mayor Leslie Jordan,
Present.
Vice Mayor Cesar Flores. I do not hear a present from Vice Mayor Cesar Flores. Councilmember Scott Friels.
here.
Thank you. Councilmember Mary Vasquez Edge.
Absent. She's excused.
Thank you, and excused. That will be noted in the minutes. Councilmember John Freeman.
Here.
Madam Mayor, we have a quorum with 3 present, 2 absent. How would you like to proceed with Vice Mayor Cesar Flores? Is that excused or unexcused for notation in the minutes?
Has anybody spoken to
I
him?
spoke to him yesterday, he said he would try. I'm like meeting on Cinco de Mayo.
So maybe he'll come a little bit later. I will keep my attention and make note when he does enter the meeting.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We have a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Action item 2A, approve the affidavit of posting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember John Freeman made the motion and Councilmember Scott Friel seconded it. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Scott Friels. I got a yes on that. Councilmember John Freeman.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, vote on that. Mayor Leslie Jordan.
Yes.
Motion passes 3 yes, 2 absent.
Thank you very much. Item 3A, discussion items. San Juan Bautista Community Plan. Staff will clarify the work program and present initial discussion points from the community meetings held May 3rd and 4th. This is an opportunity for the council to provide input into the community plan development process.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the public. I'm Don Miller, City Manager, and this is a product of work that we've been going through for the last year or so, believe it or not, culminating in the arrival of what we call a design charrette last night. So the city was fortunate to receive a grant from Housing and Community Development, and we use those grant funds to work on an urgent matter for the city, which was redefining its sphere of influence. We formed an urban growth boundary sphere of influence committee in 2020 before the arrival of our assistant city manager, Brian Crouch, and started looking at the sphere of influence and realized that we had a sphere of influence that the council adopted and LAFCO had not. And we believe that we were working with that all along, but it was pointed out to us that we were working under a sphere of influence that was adopted in the prior general plan. And so anyway, we needed to straighten out that confusion and get things in alignment that more accurately reflect the community's goals and visions for itself. And as you recall, we did a survey back in 2019, and the number one overriding priority for the citizens of this community was to remain a small and quaint community. The size of our current sphere of influence may put us at jeopardy at reaching that. So in a hurry to look at that, we brought on board a consulting team headed by EMC, and EMC is here in staff. No, they're not.
Yes.
Oh, yes, there you are. There you are. Yes. James from EMC, and then Michael Groves, the principal, will be showing up soon. He's en route. He thought he'd be here before 7. And they hired Blue Zones. Dan Burton is here representing Blue Zones to help us with community engagement. Because the goal was to create a sphere of influence and a growth pattern in the city that was based on the community's interests. And protecting and preserving was the number one goal, whether that's open space or historic heritage in our community. So that's what we've been talking about. Because it is related to the general plan, it involves all aspects of life here in town. And so we've had seven now workshops, large and small, since Tuesday. And we started with economic development. We had about 35 people there. Our economic development citizens advisory committee showed up in numbers, and that was really great. We had a very lively conversation about the economics of the city, how we should grow to retain our businesses that we have, how we should create jobs. The future growth of the city was the second meeting. Where is the potential? Where are the barriers, the fault lines and the floodplains and other barriers that may exist? Fertile agricultural land. And then we had a third session. There's Michael Brooks. Welcome, Michael. We're just getting started. The third session on Tuesday, pardon me, was supposed to be with the planning commission and working group, and that didn't work, unfortunately. So that's been postponed and now has been rescheduled for the 10th of May at 6 p.m. So we will catch up with the planning commission next week and have a similar presentation as this. Wednesday, we started off with open space. We had both property owners within the city boundaries and around the city boundaries come and talk to us about open space. Then we had a mobility and transportation conversation Wednesday afternoon with the big design charrette last night. And so some of the maps that you see on the walls here in the building, and I could use my camera to show them, are the product of 6 tables that we had last night, and placing dots on certain properties. And I'll let Dan talk about that. He's got about a 10-minute slideshow to discuss all of these different meetings and summarize to the council, and members of the public haven't been exposed to this yet. I do notice a substantial stakeholder that's in the room and also as an attendee, and that's the Community Health Foundation is here. Thank you, Ken, for coming. And Rose Oblivion is here as an attendee. So that's important because they have bought some properties, some important properties in our community, and they need to learn these plans. And still time for feedback, of course. We'll be reaching out. We have opportunities to do additional outreach after the consultants leave, and we'll be able to feedback to them as we get more input throughout the process. For example, I have an annual meeting now that I planned with Venture Vista and probably to talk about the assessment districts, and I can fold in these maps because both are right on the edge of the city's boundary. So I can find creative ways to continue to seek outreach between now and say July, and get people's feedback into our consultants. But the goal is to prepare a plan to present to LASCO. So LASCO was part of our educational moments this past few days, because we're trying to submit a survey to LASCO that LASCO will accept. So that's the ultimate goal. So anyway, Dan, I'll stop tripping over my tongue and let you gracefully lead us in a presentation.
Thanks so much, Don. Let me see if I can share my screen. It appears that I can. I think it's thinking. And I need to get out of the show slide. And Brian's going to co-present, so I want to set the stage for that. Okay. This is an honor and treat for me to be able to present tonight. Our organization is a sub to EMC to work specifically on two elements of the community plan, the community engagement, and then to lead the task of the urban design. It's a guide, and I'll just talk ever so briefly about that. But tonight, I want to share the approach we took to the community engagement And why I consider it so important that you have a very interactive community engagement process so that you have more people, organizations supporting the city in the direction that you're heading. And I think we achieved that, and I'll talk about why I think that that outcome is pretty well established. So the important thing is when we talk about growth, it can be a very controversial topic. Where do we place new buildings of residential units? What style of units allow us to maintain our character, right? And advance our history. So the planning team, the city and then the consultancies all work together to outline 5 specific topics, buckets you might want to call them, where ideas would flow. And I'm going to show in a nutshell what those are in a minute. But these were all performed over 2 days. And then, of course, we had the actual charrette, the design session last night. And I feel very well attended for a community this size, outstanding participation. We just did an open house. Ken came to the open house and shared a lot of great knowledge about that. But with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Brian, and Brian, I'll advance the slides. But Bill Nicholson with LAFCO came and did the presentation, which I felt was quite good. And so Brian, can you unmute yourself and take over?
Yes, I'm unmuted now and I can see the screen. So I'd be happy to go through the next series of slides. Why don't you advance it 1 slide, see what's next.
Just one, yeah.
Yeah.
These are the groups that we had.
Yeah. These are the groups that we had. Dan, this is a little bit ahead of me.
The economics and then with Bill. Yep.
Yeah, so maybe a little orientation on what we're seeing here.
And a number of really great explanations from staff, from Michael Groves with EMC, with Lynn Overstreet, who's provided a really good introduction on the land use side.
There we go. That's it. Okay, so I think it's important to understand why we're here. How did we end up here at this particular place with this great community engagement exercise, the planning program in general, and you know, it all starts. You know, there's a planning history involved in everything that we do. There's precedent. There are previous plans, programs. You know, what we're trying to do is make sense of what happened previously with the previous general plan. Everyone remembers this particular sphere of influence that was adopted by LAFCO, you know, laid to rest through the new general plan program. Go ahead and advance the slide. Through the new general plan program. In the new general plan 2016 program, even though LAFCO had adopted the previous the sphere of influence shown on the previous slide, there is a proposed sphere of influence that was never presented to LAFCO. And so essentially we have a proposed sphere of influence through the new general plan that was never blessed by LAFCO, and the previous general plan, the previous sphere of influence has become relatively irrelevant because we have a new general plan that shows something completely different and talks about the city's growth and development in a completely different way. Go ahead, next slide. And so I think the City Council wisely appointed an Urban Growth Boundary Committee to look at growth and development around the city, anticipating this problem and this conflict we have between the two plans and the spheres, and the need to make sense out of what's next for the community. The Urban Growth Boundary Committee struggled for a couple of years and finally got some traction this past year. I think importantly here, developed a scheme for looking at or evaluating a sphere of influence proposal. It's a scheme for evaluating a proposal. It is not a particular recommendation. It's a starting point for community conversations. And I think this was made very clear when the Planning Commission and City Council looked at this, the results of the Urban Growth Boundary Committee's work, and established the community plan program consisting of, as Dawn said, of the sphere of influence study, along with the SB2 grant proposal that was focused more or less on the south end of town. And so I think as we, as with most things, our evaluation of the Urban Growth Boundary Committee's work has progressed beyond just simply lines on a map, and it's progressed to a point where we're actually looking at a concept here for evaluating a sphere of influence without really establishing that sphere of influence or recommendation. So it's the basis for community conversation, considering a very important conceptual scheme. And you see this on this map. It's a little bit cluttered because it shows the Aquas Priolo Earthquake Special Study Zone and some Williamson lands, and also underlay there some flood zone information. But looking at the orange, the yellow, and the purple highlighted areas, you see both orange is a tier 1, called a tier 1, and yellow is called a tier 2. And what these mean conceptually for conversation purposes is that tier 1 was looked at by the Urban Growth Boundary Committee as areas that were more or less appropriate for development, subject to evaluation by the Community Planning Commission and City Council going forward through the planning program. And then tier 2 was looked at more or less as areas that were really important to frame community's character, looking at conservation, preservation, and the role of open space and its interaction with development areas for that purpose. And so I think it would be a mistake to look at tier 1 and 2 as sort of a phased approach to looking at a sphere, or something that's sort of we do tier 1 and then we do tier 2, sort of a primary and secondary sphere of influence recommendation. That would not be an appropriate way to look at this recommendation. What we found, I think, through this process is that, and I think this is an evolution of the Urban Growth Boundary Committee's work, is that now we're looking at a concept here where to be played out through the community plan program in a specific way. And that is that at some point, we're going to be looking at an area that the city intends will be appropriate for development and services, and active preservation and establishment of open space areas for a variety of purposes: recreation, production, ag production, conservation and preservation in those areas. And I think that's the important concept here, is that beyond that sphere of influence are areas where the city really wants to exert some influence to protect and maintain its character, its historic character at the landscape level, that enables people to see, as the city of history, what that landscape really means or meant to people who first populated San Juan Bautista and have come to call San Juan Bautista home through the years, that value this character. So go ahead, next slide. So that's an important consideration, I think, in this whole process, and establishes sort of a real good foundation for the community to come together around these very important issues. And as we see here, a sphere of influence is legally defined. So do we need a sphere of influence? Yes, we do, by government code. Do we need a urban service area per se? Well, we do service master planning that can occur within the sphere of influence. Do we need an urban growth boundary? yes, we do need an urban growth boundary, but we need one only if the general plan policies require that we establish one. So the urban growth boundary really is a tool, general plan tool for looking at what are the solid hard lines that the city wants to establish or should the city establish. And that will come out of the community plan program as a product. If the community plan program in the end, Planning Commission, Community Planning Commission, City Council wants to see that happen, it will rest in the general plan. So go ahead, next slide. And so we all know what the factors are when we do our sphere of influence recommendation. This is what LAFCO will look at. Go ahead, next slide. We've all seen this information. And then it's important to understand that after we're all finished establishing our sphere of influence, any other land use measures that we want to have in the general plan, we're going to discuss this with San Benito County. And these concepts will be fully described in the community plan for future adoption through the general plan itself, so general plan amendment. After we have the county's agreement, acceptance to work with us to achieve these objectives, LAFCO will give great weight to that agreement. So that will be an agreement that we have with San Benito County regarding these policies and objectives, and LAFCO will then decide the sphere of influence, really based on that foundation. I think that the other thing I want to have everyone understand is that this program, as Dawn said, is a combination of two things. When we looked at our SB2 grant, we realized that a lot of the land use decisions in the South End would require a careful look at our sphere of influence. And that really led us to this particular program, which combines an overall look at our sphere, our urban growth, or the way that we provide services, and where we want to grow, including a careful look at the South End. And this is really an important point because we get 2/3 of our funding through this program, and that drives the timeline, it drives the scope of work, and it's an important consideration to why we're really focused on the South End. In addition to that, this is an area that is really amenable to very important considerations regarding development and open space preservation for a variety of reasons. Next slide. So the community plan is a path. It's a pathway to a new sphere of influence boundary, urban services boundary, an urban rural boundary, if that's how it's described, or an urban growth boundary, a municipal services review, and an environmental review document at the end of the line that will enable us to incorporate this plan into the general plan. Next slide. And I think that kind of wraps it up as far as how we got here and what are the important considerations at the broad scale. So I'd just like to emphasize, with respect to what's happening outside the city limits and considerations for the sphere of influence, urban growth boundary, et cetera, we're really looking at the landscape level outside city limits, looking to see what we need to do to further preserve, protect, enhance the city's character as the city of history.
Great. Well, wonderful stage setting, Brian. I want to talk just briefly about the other element of your community plan, and that is once you decide your sphere of influence and your boundaries, what will fit inside and how that fits with what people have been asking for in terms of their vision, long-term vision of the community. So I wanted to do this quick little series to illustrate that. If you don't have the right guiding documents and people want to walk, your active transportation plan would give you sidewalks, crosswalks, the base structure in order to be able to walk, but people still won't walk. And then say you add trees, shade, a well-maintained park to that, most people still won't walk. It's not until you go to the next level where you decide what buildings, what they should look like, how they should meet the street. So here's where your urban design guy starts to bring elements together. You've been doing that, of course. The Mission Garden is just an example, but it becomes a showcase for how you attract festivals and events, all of what your community is about. What those elements might be. I was here Sunday and I got to watch the Pony Rex, and the homes and the love and the beauty that people have for their property and wanting to contribute to the street. And then, of course, the heritage sites, the history, the wonderful offerings of the outdoors, of the natural setting, and then, of course, the amazing historical sense. So all that fits in what you want to protect and not lose over time, right? So very quick summary, and Michael, if you don't mind, please add to this. We were able to summarize what each working group was most interested in. Economics, a beautiful list that helps guide what elements you're going to make sure that fit into the growth management plan and the elements. This is a partial list, but it goes on that people really do care about how many housing units you're going to be required, but also where they might be, what they might look like, and how they would contribute to the community overall. The second working group was people living, working, and being able to play in their own community. And again, these aren't in any order by primary is higher. It's just that this was the total list that people came up with that they really care about for the community. And again, we had to use 2 sheets. Wi-Fi infrastructure was pretty high on the list, I will say that. But I care for watching to make sure the youth of your community are cared for and provided for, and same with seniors. So these were all under the living, working, and playing. Then open space preservation, very a significant bucket that people filled. And again, you live in such a precious but also a delicate part of California that people want to take advantage of the protection, preservation, and certainly watching over the archaeological features and developing stronger relationship with the Native American the communities. And then, of course, for all the health and safety that goes into a well laid out community. The final session we had was on mobility and transportation. What I really like about this will flow directly into the next project the community is taking on, the active transportation plan. So these elements were very well expressed by a group of people that came, things that are on the ground or things that they want to make sure over time are on the ground. Now, big event last night. Oh, please, Don.
Some of the important players in these meetings, when we talked about open space, of course, the Historical Society shared with us a map of the properties heading towards the canyon and the Native American importance. And we had a group of Native Americans, I would say 5, come and join us in the conversation. And it was a welcome surprise to hear what they had to say. Miss Agbani could only come in the afternoon because she can't drive at night. And she shared with us that her siblings that are now co-owners of the property there along the Alameda corridor are really preferring open space. Really want that to be open space, and so that's something interesting that we learned. I think Scott knew that along but it was news for the rest of us. And then it was really great for Jewel Gentry from the mission to come. In fact, he had invited the Native Americans. And I don't know that the Native Americans and mission have ever walked into a meeting side by side together. So it was great to get to know people and found that the productive interchange of ideas. And that's a very similar presentation to this group.
Thank you, Don. Yeah, appreciate that. But what I loved about the process that we followed was how interactive it was. People listened to the broad overview, very similar to what Brian was just able to offer tonight. But people, they just went right to work. Really good discussions, lots of lines were drawn and just notations made on the map that you see around the room. So this will help inform the next stage of work that will go into it. But it was really inspiring to see that almost in a heartbeat, people were working together. They chose the table they wanted to be with the people they wanted, but there was still a very good mix at each table. And that really helped round it out and make all the elements very holistic. And then we had folks to present. This was recorded. And the presentations for each table, we would go around the room. We did two different activities. The first activity was, what do you want to protect, preserve, make sure we don't touch? And then the second of the remaining spaces, where would it be most important to have commercial, residential development? So that was pretty darn good. We even had, this gentleman gave us a little more depth in his presentation.
Mr. Dassel, very enthusiastic.
He was, he really was. So anyway, just kind of wrapping up, this is where we are with the project. And all these elements are going on. It's not like one is completed and then you go to the next one. But one of the ones coming up, and we'll be working on this June and July, is to actually, from all that we've learned, to build urban design guidelines that will help define the actual placement of buildings or what they might look like or how they might operate and honor your historic and cultural places. And final slide, just to prep you for another big event, the active transportation plan, which is running concurrent with this plan, will run a little bit longer, but the big charrette is going to be June 6th to 10th. So if you can pencil out, we'd love to get as much attendance for that series of events as here. This sets the stage for a lot of the funds that Caltrans and others will be spending to upgrade the walkability, livability, bicycling placemaking. This is one of the few states, maybe the only state, that cares that much about going back and repairing the mistakes that got made over decades. And so the completion of the active transportation plan is going to put you in a very fine position to receive funds that those who don't do the plans wouldn't be able to receive. So, and finally, I always like to close with Bill Murray, who's here to remind us how awesome he is. Not just as a people, but as a community. So that's the end of the presentation, and we invite you to turn your chairs around so that we can all be more social with one another. Sorry, we only could find one good place for the screen. So.
Best we can do. Okay, thanks, Dan. How long have you been doing this?
This is my 50th year.
50th year? So Mayor, we want to bring everyone up to speed. I'm sorry that Vice Mayor Rose isn't here or but this is being recorded, obviously. The work last night was recorded as best we could. So they're gonna take a couple weeks to patch put it together, and then I'll be on our website. There was a concern that we're not doing like 5 of these shreds, and then soliciting more and more input. And so I think every chance we get, we should be talking about this, maybe a much bigger spot on the agenda, later meetings, so we can select some keep the status and keep the public kind of in tune with what's happening. But we're here to answer questions and ask questions. One of the cool things that came out at the end of our conversation was the concept of an amphitheater. And I think more than one table had that idea at the old cement plant. So that's another interesting idea that came up. But I think in all, I think through easements, we can preserve ridgelines. Through easements, we can preserve agricultural land. And we had the ag trust folks there talking about the island property and the future prospects and stuff. So that's, I think, was a real important message for it. It wasn't about growth and sprawl. I don't know if Scott, John, we're there about something.
Stop.
I was just surprised by the amount of people there being there. And it was nice to see people communicating, everything was civil. And sometimes in San Juan, that's a little difficult, but yeah, it was a nice event. I stayed for about 45 minutes and listened to what a lot of people had to say. You know, we still have to, a lot of education needs to go out there, especially what city limits, what's county, what the state can do. It gets confusing. But I think it went well.
Well, thanks, John.
I also think it went really well. It was, in my memory, it was the best attended event for that type of, I call it planning session. It was the biggest crowd I've ever seen in San Juan for something like that. So I thought that was very good. I was surprised at the end of the day, a lot of the tables, they actually agreed on a lot of things. So I think that speaks well of the whole procedure or concept. And yeah, the amphitheater cement plant was talked about several times, and there's other uses for it too, and I don't know, who knows what's best, you know, we'll decide that later.
Cement Rock San Juan Bautista.
Well, there was a, Bill Grams Presents years ago wanted to build them, and that just kind of fell through because of lack of assistance from the supervisor. Right now, it's under a pretty lengthy lease to run cattle on, so I don't know how far down the road it's.
Well, we also found out, not at the meeting last night, that one of the earlier groups, that El Teatro Campesino owns a place up, not near the cement plant, but up on the hillside, that could also be used as a theater and amphitheater. And I think that's what they're going to try for, but it's taken them a while to get the capital. They're searching for money to do that. I'll talk to Phil later.
Super cool. But we do have members of the community here. Hey, members of the community. Nice to see your faces in the chambers for once, and on the phone. So, persons who? Oh, okay. Persons who wish to address the city council or this group are asked to complete a speaker's card if you're in chambers. If not, raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and get everybody in. Does anybody have? Come on down or pass your paper up.
And Madam Mayor, we
Yeah.
do have someone raising their hand here online as well at this time. So when time comes, let me know and I will promote them forward.
They can actually see us with this up, and I
Oh, they
don't
can?
know why.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
So we're visible at the moment. I don't know why.
Okay. Should I stop sharing the screen, then you
No.
get bigger?
No. Please keep sharing screen. That's allowed us to be able to see you.
Okay.
Sorry, speaker card.
There you go.
Very good. My name is Cynthia Roosevelt, and we own, New husband own the property, 18 acres on the south side of San Juan Bautista, industrial land. And I guess it's just a comment or, I don't know, question, if there's any way that we could, the process for developing, getting permits and things like that, if it could be a little bit more quicker. It took me about a year to be able to use my property. And then it took me another 2 years to actually get permits to build a building. By that time, we were wasted with money. And just to get, like, for a simple, right now we have a violation for grading, it's already been a month. And they're yet to get any kind of response. Time is money, and if there's any kind of development going to happen, it takes so long to do it. It really breaks the pocket of those who are trying to develop. So I'm just wondering if there's anything else that could be done that could rush things a little bit more quicker. I mean, they're like to present something to the city council, there's only 1 day, I'm assuming, per month. So that's even a little difficult. If you don't have the plans ready at that time, then you have to wait for the next month to come due. And then you have reviews and all that, and that goes through a whole process. And you guys are subcontracted with the engineer and planning department, and I don't know if they're on this projects at the time, or they're just procrastinating, or what's going on there. But that's very costly, to charge a great amount per hour for their services. And I think that at the end of the day, I mean, for us developers, especially people like us that we don't have very deep pockets, it really becomes a problem. And, you know, I know that the city, they try to do as best as they can, but like I said, it's really difficult, and people seem to shy away. We had an investor, and he ended up putting in almost $100,000 for the cannabis project. And he actually got scared. He's like, forget it. And he just broke the contract, said, I'm out of here, because he just feels that it's too much restrictions and it's too much delay. And, you know, things that he wants, or you guys, we think you guys want, it's not really the community probably wants. So I just wanted to work that out there and see, you know, council could take a look at it.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else from the public? I think you're the only other public we have.
I know, I think probably the rest of it.
Okay, Norma, go ahead. Do we have anybody, any comments from the audience?
We do. I have Rosa Vivian Fernandez from San Benito Health Foundation has raised her hand. Right now, I am going to allow, there we go. I'm promoting her to allow to speak. Rosa, you might be muted. You are still, there you go. Go ahead, you may speak.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. This is Rosa Vivian Fernandez, San Benito Health Foundation. And I did not have an opportunity to participate. Unfortunately, we had a delegation from Mexico in Sacramento that we needed to work with in conjunction with community health centers throughout the state that are serving the agricultural community. So we were tied up in meetings there, and I rushed back from Sacramento to attend this meeting. So I'm here in town, but I didn't make it to San Juan. But you know, the comment that I wanted to make, I look forward to looking at the presentations via recording, but I'd like to have additional opportunity for input other than this week. We are a small organization and we have a short bandwidth, but we do have property, two parcels of, or actually 3 parcels of property in San Juan that we would like to develop, and we're in plans of development. And we are looking at how we can influence our organization to bring additional federal funds to San Juan Bautista. So I'd like to have further discussion in terms of what these maps really look like and how we can work together.
Right, so Mayor, we welcome that. I recognize, as I drove home last night, the Health Foundation wasn't here, and that's a big concern. So I'm glad to see Ken in the audience and then Rosa, and we have plenty of chance, especially well, as you're available in the next few weeks, to share the maps. They're up on the walls here, and you can handy so you can see them. They're all very similar. And I think you'll find nothing that strikes you as awful or shocking. I think there's a ton of support for workforce housing, there's a ton of support for affordable housing, hillside preservation, which is important with the property on the south side of the Alameda. And then gateways, we did talk, David Maderas was here and proud of his work on gateways. We're gonna resurrect that work. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things to share with you, and we look forward to spending lunch or something with you, just talking about it for 90 minutes or 2 hours, whatever we need to do.
Wonderful. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Norma, do we have any other hands?
At this time, I do not see any other hands raised.
Thank you very much. Do you gentlemen have any other input?
I think it's important to, it's Michael Groves, president of the EMC Planning Group. And so thank you for having the meeting tonight and keeping it non-formal. I think that's really important. One of the things I said last night, and I just wanted to get confirmed from the mayor and the council, is that we thought we would take these maps and try to consolidate them into a couple of different alternatives that came out of what happened last night. At least our view of the input we had. So we have not only the maps, but we have the working sessions that we had with each one of the groups and what we heard from them. It won't be perfect, and it's not expected to be perfect. It's just we want to bring it to you as a council and a planning commission in some kind of a joint session where we have this kind of a circle around the table, and we put the maps on the table, and we can actually talk about it and not have a diocese situation where we're presenting. I would like to break it down into, let's take the maps to the next level and come up with a preferred alternative. And once we come up with a preferred alternative, then we have a project description and we can actually write the community plan. Because Brian's got us under a grant, and that grant has a deadline on it, and it's not long away. it's a short course, right? So I just want to make sure we are efficient in terms of that. So that's going to be really beneficial to us.
That's a great idea.
And it also gets the council and the planning commission talking to each other, and hopefully we get some coherence in terms of that. So that was really the only other thing I wanted to mention. And I did want to, I don't want you to miss the fact that Dan threw up the last slide was the Bill Murray slide was the last slide. I like that. But the last slide before that was the active transportation. So I don't, and Dan said, we've got a couple of components. We're doing the design guidelines and we're doing community outreach, but they're also doing this mobility piece. And that mobility piece will also get dropped into the community. And then just so I'm making assumptions. I don't want to make assumptions. The council understands that we're heading towards a general plan amendment, and the general plan amendment would incorporate the community plan, which would then have hopefully a sphere of influence boundary that we agree upon, that the town agreed upon. And then an urban service area, if we decide that, or a growth boundary, if they decide that, those are tools. So that's where we're headed, and just want to make sure everybody's clear that kind of the next piece of the puzzle, the active transportation plan is running right alongside of us. They're going to have input into the community plan, but the next piece is decide on some mapping and land uses within that. So, and then I'll say one last thing, and this is how the world works if you're in tune with it, right? Somebody talked about the theater, the concept, the idea of an amphitheater, and we talked about Billy Graham wanting to do that years ago, and then we talked about glamping and having some glamping. So people don't want to see a 5-story hotel building, right? But they'd like to see something that works. So this morning I got a call from a large company that wants to do high-end glamping, and they're looking for a site. So it's like, I get these calls all the time, but it's fortuitous because of this, like we talked about it last night, and they might also want to do a theater type situation and bring that in. So there's always opportunities to do that. I also know a bunch of people in the cannabis industry, so there's also opportunities to bring people back to the table that the city wants.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anything else? Thank you. Dan?
Mayor, I just want to pick up on something Michael so eloquently said last night, and bears repeating. certainly in front of the council. Michael stated, but I want to back it up, that of all the towns I've ever worked in, we've never, ever had the opportunity to work with the staff that got so involved and led so well through the whole process. This is just outstanding, both Don and Brian. I mean, I can't even come up with a near comparison of how much fun and how engaged they were through the whole process.
Very nice to hear. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the cause? Any other hands raised?
There are no hands raised at this time. Anyone who is joining us by Zoom and video, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. For those that have dialed in, please press *9. It will raise your hand. Madam Mayor, there's no hands raised at this time here on Zoom.
Thank you very much. Can you please make a note that Vice Mayor Flores has arrived?
Yes, I will make note. Vice Mayor Flores arrived right now. I show it is 7 o'clock exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate this. I was not able to attend last night. I appreciate all the work that everybody has put on this thus far, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing this move forward and what comes out of it. We appreciate all the work that you all are doing on it, staff included. Sorry, Don and Brian, staff. Just staff. Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn if nobody has anything else. Thank you very much. Councilmember Friels made a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Councilmember Freeman seconded the motion. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Vice Mayor Cesar Flores.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Scott Friel.
Yes.
Councilmember May Vasquez is absent. Councilmember John Freeman.
Yes.
Mayor Leslie Jordan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Very nice.